Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the Greener Shipping Summit of 2026. It is an honor and pleasure to welcome everybody here, and I think that we will have a very insightful discussion into the topics that will be covered today. Unfortunately, the times that we're living in are not really green. And with all the bombs and the war taking place in many areas of the planet, the period is anything but green. Of course, we hope that this situation will be, let's say, temporary, and things will move to the right track as soon as possible. And on the other hand, shipping is becoming increasingly complex, and the younger people here that are attending, and it's very nice to see that, will be faced with a multitude of challenges that 20, 30, 40 years ago, they just did not exist. And the know-how, everybody involved in, let's say, managerial or positions in shipping is huge and very complex. Today, you will have, and we will have, the opportunity to listen to the insight of leading experts in various fields. And these fields cover a small part of the total world of shipping. And without any further discussion, I would like to welcome our keynote speaker, Mr. Evangelos Kartibelis.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Evangelos Kartibelis. I'm the Managing Director of Anglo-Eastern Ship Management Hellas, and I would like to welcome you on my behalf to the Greener Summer Summit of 2026. In setting the tone for the summit, our headlines for today are quite simple. It's geopolitics, IMO Zero Net Framework, and new technologies, which are all considered as drivers of emissions. In shipping, route risk, fuel risk, regulatory risk no longer sit in separate boxes. They all move together. That changes how we run fleets, forecast costs, and build decarbonization plans. Over the next 10 minutes, I will give you a strategic briefing of what has changed so far, what's conveyed globally, and what actions may matter the most in the next few months. Let me frame the briefing in 3 moves. First is geopolitics. Rerouting and volatility have fundamentally altered operational baselines. When diversions add 30 to 50% to voyage time, security risk becomes a direct driver of fuel burn and carbon intensity. There is no longer an occasional disruption. This is a standing variable on our emission model. Second is the International Maritime Zero Net Framework, and this is where we are moving. We are moving towards a unified global architecture with less regional fragmentation, more aligned through a global fuel standard and a pricing mechanism, with an expected entry into force on 2027. And I say expected because this is not yet cleared. The trajectory is consistent with IMO stated aim of net zero greenhouse gas emissions from international shipping by 2050. Third is technology. Technology choices are increasingly defined by compliance value, what reduces exposure now, what preserves optionality later, and what will make economic sense under the tightening standards. Owners must prepare with fuel and fleet options aligned with the zero-net pathway. Here is an operational proof point example, as you can see. The Red Sea Cape diversion is a vivid example of 30 to 50% transit time increases through the Cape diversions. What does this really mean in real terms? It increases bunker consumption per delivery cargo, pushes up insurance premiums and inventory carrying costs, and often triggers an emission rebound because vessels speed up to recover the schedule, spiking CO2 emissions. Strategically, the message is blend. Security events aren't just schedule disruptions, they are now core operational emission variables. And if our mission plan doesn't have any route risk scenario built in, it is incomplete. The second geopolitical channel is a regulatory acceleration and fragmentation risks, especially in Europe. Two things matter here the most is the Fuel EU and the EU ETS. The Fuel EU is particularly clear in its direction. It is fully applied by me from 2025 and sets maximum limits for the yearly average of greenhouse gas emissions of the energy used by vessels above 5,000 gross tons, calling at European port on a well-to-wake basis. You go, you pay. You don't go, you don't pay. It also drives an at-berth zero emissions behavior through onshore power supply, a requirement beginning from 2030 on covered ports and expecting to extend more by 2035 where operational capacity exists. So the point that we have here isn't that Europe has rules. The point is that regional rules move faster when geopolitics raises and energy security stakes, and companies need a strategy that works both globally and regionally. This is where the global pathway matters the most. The IMO strategy sets the direction of travel with checkpoints towards net zero. The IMO states net zero compliance by 2050 with indicative checkpoints, at least 20% striving to 30% of greenhouse gas emissions reduction by 2030, and 70% striving to 80% by 2040. In other words, the strategy is not just an endpoint, it is a stacked demand signal to scale fuels technology and compliance for the systems over time. Officially, the IMO describes the net zero framework as a combining mandatory emission limits with greenhouse gas pricing across the sector, including global fuel standard, based on annual greenhouse gas intensity calculated on a well-to-wake basis. And it also provides an economic mechanism where ships above threshold would require to take immediate actions, while ships with low or zero emissions can earn rewards. Time-wise, IMO notes were approved on MEPC 83 and said formally to be initially adopted on 2025, which is currently pending, with an expected entry into force initially again at 2027. So for the leaders, the planning horizon is no longer an abstract, it's a compliance clock. Green fuels require massive renewable build-out and create new dependencies. Bunkering hubs are needed, political stability and technical readiness needed, and especially for hazardous fuels like ammonia. Equity and just transition in least developed countries face disproportionate transport cost impacts, and levy revenues become politically congested with questions of who pays, who receives, and under what conditions. Without global alignment, though, ships will regulation shop to avoid cost. The zero net framework lies precisely in reducing the incentive for a pathwork and make decarbonization investable. Now to execution. The deck lays here in three wedges: efficiency measures, fuel switch, and key enablers for operational readiness. I want to underline here that quick energy saving adaptation routines, such as enhancement to company procedures, voyage planning, and a lot other, can deliver immediate savings and stack any future fuel pathway. That makes them one of the cleanest examples of no regrets capital investments in a volatile geopolitical environment. We go to the building of the portfolio. For the companies, there are two terms, is the near-term solution and the scale-up solution. The near-term solutions, such as operational efficiency, speed and weather routing, hull cleaning discipline, targeted retrofit pilot technologies, regulatory management, exposure management, and fuel EU pool readiness, can provide a return on investment under 3 years with immediate OpEx reduction and immediate liability reduction. On the scale-up solutions, which is fleet renewal to greener, capable dual-fuel vessels, securing fuel offtakes, and building operational readiness into new buildings can happen while joining the corridor efforts to de-risk the pathway. I will close with 3 actions from the deck because I believe this is what matters the most to us. The first one is operationalize geopolitics. Put route risk scenarios into your emission forecasting, adjust buffers for checkpoint disruptions, and map fuel supply dependencies to political stability. Number 2 would be for the companies to build a zero net framework compliance model, model cost impacts under fuel intensity, and levy scenarios, stress test operational expenses against carbon prices in the cost per ton range, and evaluate pooling options. Number 3 is the strategic investment, execute, no regrets retrofits, as far as practically possible, secure scalable fuel partnerships from 2027 and onwards, and collaborate on green corridors to de-risk technology. Success in 2026 requires the departments of the company to be unified under one brain. Thank you very much.